Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Say Report. I'm your host, Devon Decker, wasting no time because we are on a tight schedule today. And joining me, my host companion, Sejohn. How you doing, Sejohn?
Good. I go ahead, buddy. You were right. We were on a tight schedule, and I am doing my best to keep myself together for that. So I'm not gonna just completely derail us. So go ahead, buddy.
No, feel free to derail us. I want you to derail us. People are getting a tight 90 episode.
So you know how they say that nothing good ever happens at 2 a.m.?
Oh yes. Oh frickety tickety. Have I got a nothing good happens at 2 a.m. story?
Yeah, so at 2:30 in the morning this morning, I was at a birthday party, a house party. It started off at some fancy restaurants because we're adults, or at least we pretend to be. So we started off at like a fancy place, but then at some point it devolved back into the old college party of drinking on somebody's couch and playing that fruit game that you like so much, where you drop them and everybody turns into melons. I don't know what the name of it is.
Suika game. It's just melon in Japanese.
The suke? Yeah, something like that.
Suika game.
But anyway, so we're all sitting there, and I'm playing this game, and I found myself in a conversation, and I said a thing, and some people there got it, some people didn't, and I realized I needed to throw this to the group. But when I talk about the Nickelodeon movie Barnyard, the
Kevin James
classic,
isn't his father Johnny Cash or something crazy?
No. It's Sam
Elliott.
What's his nuts? With the mustache there from Big Lebowski. Yeah, Sam Elliott doing the most amazing Johnny Cash as he sings the Tom Petty cover there. Won't Back Down. Yeah. But that's so the feelings about the movies aside, because I don't want to derail us too much.
Otis is a boy cow with an udder. That bothers me a little bit.
What?
That Otis is a boy cow with an udder.
Yeah. It's a constant on the subreddit. That's all we talk about. But there is this. Some people have some really anatomically correct drawings about that. There is this kind of sense in that movie that, and this is the phrase that I said: what Lion King is to Hamlet, Barnyard is to Lion King. Because I was trying to describe it to somebody that had not seen it. And immediately half the room just went, yeah, and then the other half of the room just went, the fuck does that mean?
I mean, let's go back even further to 1995, where Devon learned all about Hamlet from Renaissance Man. That'll be a discussion later on this year. But there are a lot of people who do not understand Hamlet, as demonstrated by that time that I taught a 5-minute Hamlet study session before a script analysis class was supposed to take a quiz on Hamlet, and everybody got an A. But the professor had snuck into the back of my quick, here's all the Hamlet stuff that you need to know for a quiz on Hamlet. And he's like, those people all got A's. They all got 100% on my quiz, but it's because you explained it to them. None of them read it. And I want to be mad at you, but also, you know Hamlet. And it's really crazy how there are just people who don't understand Hamlet and thus would not understand that the Lion King is just Hamlet.
Yeah, but that's, I don't think, where the breakdown was in this particular group.
I'm just saying,
we're talking about people like us, right? I think it was more the idea that why wouldn't Barnyard, and I have reasons for this, but why wouldn't Barnyard just be to Hamlet as opposed to Lion King, right? And I said, and I then proceeded to rant as, again, I'm just sitting here staring at this stupid fucking fruit game. There's a 2-player mode on Switch. It's
I know.
Kind of bizarrely cathartic. It's really weird.
If it had online, I would do it, but I think it's local co-op only. Right?
This is our secret review for Melon Drop on the Switch, but so we're sitting here playing this game, and I'm talking about Barnyard. Because we were talking about weird Disney movies, because Jimmy Neutron has had a little bit of a resurgence lately.
Do you mean weird Nickelodeon movies?
Nickelodeon movies. What did I say?
You said Disney, and both of them are Nickelodeon. So.
Yeah. No. Specifically Nickelodeon. No, we were talking about not Disney movies. We were talking about Nickelodeon movies. Mm-hmm. And again, it started with Jimmy Neutron, evolved into some other Nickelodeon movies. Talked about how the orange tape to me was a guarantee of quality when I was a kid. There was no better movie than Harriet the Spy, that kind of shit.
I mean, he said it before on the show, people. This is not new news. I love that we're just building out the lore.
Yeah. So we found ourselves talking about Barnyard because the show was, I believe, probably more successful and popular than the movie itself. People didn't. So some people there knew the show. Some people just didn't know it at all.
Right.
Which is
it ran for 4 years.
It's mid-tier Nick. Yeah.
2007 to 2011.
Most people there knew the show.
Yeah.
Didn't know it had started with a movie, and like I kind of talked about how like that was kind of their thing for a little while, is they'd like test out a concept, and then if it did really well, they'd break it out. We see that all the time, in especially now with like DreamWorks and Nick and Netflix and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But anyway, so we got on Barnyard, and some people hadn't seen it, and I was like, well, Barnyard is basically Lion King, and somebody said, well, Lion King is not really original either because of the Hamlet. And I was just like, okay, yes, but what Lion King was to Hamlet, Barnyard was to Lion King. And then I laid out all this stuff about how like the ways in which Lion King uses Hamlet clearly as like its background of like what the story is. It is somewhat of a tropey story to begin with. So like there's arguments to be made one way or the other, but in my book, it is basically just Disney retelling Hamlet, right? And then like the ways in which it does twist on that, though, right? Like, so your Rosencrantz and Guildenstern, played by Timon and Pumbaa, don't just disappear for the rest of the play. In fact, they become super integral to the plot later in the story, right? And so, like, all this stuff that happens with Hamlet, that happens traditionally in the old play and early on, actually becomes like super important to his character growth later. And like, basically, it's like Hamlet, if he was able to actually fix his mental health, is essentially what Lion King is, right? And then from that, Barnyard just goes super surface level of taking all of that.
Yeah, I mean, it's a...
So, like,
even
it is through the lens of Lion King 100%, however you want to structure that grammar.
Right. I mean, it's one of those situations where, obviously, Lion King, in addition to stealing from Kimba the White Lion, which has been proven in court, they were very much aping on Hamlet. But when the Nickelodeon movies are coming along, they're very much aping Disney. Even as someone who has only seen up to the won't back down scene in Barnyard. I've never seen Barnyard tip to tail, as it were.
Are you kidding me?
No.
Oh my God, we might have to do that as that might end up being a time capsule.
And I would be fine with it. It's just one of those ones that, like, I worked at the video store. I was familiar with it. I'm like, I'm okay. I mean, I am not kidding when I say Sejohn bringing me to see Ratatouille in 2007 is what got me back watching animation. I had been working...
do it with Over the Hedge.
Yeah, I mean, Over the Hedge, that was something I'm just like, this was fun. I'm glad that we saw it, but...
I only went for the Ben Folds. I was there because I love that movie, but I know the only reason I got you and Boz to go is because I mentioned that Ben Folds did, like, the entire
that's
soundtrack,
how you got Boz to
like...
go. I was just there and, like, I'll go see a movie, but it wasn't until Ratatouille where, like, I started to get excited about seeing animated films, and I would go out of my way to see animated films again. And a lot of that comes from working at Blockbuster from 2002 to 2005, and just the insane number of very, very, like, cheap knockoffs and, like, quick to DVD stuff that I was just inundated with. Like Open Season, and Open Season, by all accounts, might be very good, but it just hit me at a time where I'm like, I'm not in the mood for this. Shrek 2.
I was seeing all of these. Just
I know
to
you
give
were.
the counter side to this, I was seeing all of these movies, and I will tell you right now, no. Open Season got its sequels based on the fact that they cost somehow even less than Open Season, which was an accounting like miracle. So they were kind of just done as like a proof of concept for how cheap can we make an animated movie. Okay,
good. I'm glad that my read on those is not off. But it got to the point where even Shrek 2. Now, Shrek 2 is the most celebrated of the Shrek franchise. They re-released it, and it made more money in its re-release this year than Soul, Turning Red, and Luca combined, which is kind of insane in its opening weekend.
They also advertised it, but
that's another thing. But Shrek 2, I walked out of Shrek 2 being like, wow, that was hyper derivative. Like Shrek, because of just how toxic the animated film, like, water was around me, even Shrek 2 could not escape me being like, it was nice, but it was kind of just Shrek again. And like, there's like, yeah, but the fact that he's wearing a thong, that's hilarious. Like, that was one of my coworkers. I'm like, yeah, that was a good bit, but like, I'm just not there for it. And Ratatouille is really what broke it. So yes, Barnyard. I mean, I saw Jimmy Neutron and I liked it for what it was, but I think the show did a lot to build the character of Jimmy Neutron, specifically the Jimmy Timmy Power Hours where they crossed over with the Fairly Odd Parents.
Yeah,
And
hard to
like,
talk about that stuff nowadays
yeah,
because
because Butch Hartman's
those are okay, but there's some Drake Bell nonsense that's wrapped up in the Timmy shit and like
yeah.
yeah,
Well, Drake
but
Bell's
yes,
only in the
yeah,
live
yeah.
action stuff. Luckily, the Jimmy Timmy Power Hour, it's just
That's
Butch
just the
Hartman
Butch
that you
Hartman
have
of
to
it
deal
all.
with. Like, it's not the
Yeah.
the twofer. But yeah, it's one of those situations where I didn't see Barnyard, but I saw that scene and was like, this is really good. But even as somebody who has only seen from the start of Barnyard to the I Won't Back Down cover by Sam Elliott that has seriously literally touched my brain, apparently.
I mean, the real meme from the movie though is the most Mr. Boombastic scene. Like, I bet you when I say this, like the Mr. Boombastic rat meme, that like GIF, whatever, like however you've encountered it
the
out there,
pig doing
more
it?
people in our audience have probably like clicked with that than anything else we've said so far.
Yeah, I have not seen that GIF. Shaggy is Shaggy for me because I've seen him in concert too many times, which is a weird thing to say. Not a humble brag, just a true statement of Devon Decker. But yeah, even as somebody who only knows Barnyard through that, they were clearly stealing from Lion King, stealing from this thing that Disney had done that was hyper successful, and like to the point where I'm trying to see when the Broadway one came out. Like, was that
Broadway
in the
Lion King?
minds too? Like, let's see.
Out of the early 2000s, because I'm pretty sure it's one of those ones that we watched like the documentary behind the scenes stuff when we were at URI, which would have been late 2000s. So like it had to have been early 2000s, if not late 90s.
I got an internship with it debuted July 8th, 1997. So like it was like obviously we're gonna see it from Lion. I had gotten an internship with the lighting designer, but I would have had to pay my whole way. Like through the summer, there was an unpaid internship in New York, and I'm like,
oh, the 90s.
I can't afford this.
Interns still get treated like shit and need to be treated better, but man, we have come a long way since that shit.
Oh my god, yeah. Everybody's like, why wouldn't you do this? And I'm like, because I'm paying to go to school, and I just can't afford to live in New York for 3 months. Like, it would be another semester of school. I don't have that money. And you can't get student loans for, like, summer internships that are not for credit.
I'll say this, the decks they're probably using for the light boards at Broadway shows are probably fucking huge. You could have hung a hammock under that shit and slept there.
I feel like that they've shied away from that. That's a big thing in Only Murders in the Building season 3. Since we're kind of like in this Disney
I was gonna
realm.
say that's a big thing in the Muppet Show, but yeah, yeah, okay.
Scooter's uncle owns the theater, Sejohn. He can get away with anything. But yes, so no, I completely agree with you, and I don't know why. And it's not borrowing from Hamlet. You know what is another one that someone was like, "Have you ever seen Bamboozled by Spike Lee?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I've seen it." And she's like, "Do you know what that like?" It clicked to me what it is. I'm like, "That is Hamlet," and she's like, "Yeah," and I'm like, "I'm glad that we had this discussion. Thank you for that." That was my 12th grade
I will say this
English
about Bamboozled. More akin to the ways in which Lion King uses Hamlet as a backbone to then like tell this other story, right? Like Bamboozled does so much more than just ape Hamlet. Like there's I am not the biggest Spike Lee fan. Like I have some up and downs with the ways in which I have watched Spike Lee films in my life, and also like kind of taken in some of his like entire steez like throughout like interviews and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, there are some Spike Lee films that kind of just really love.
Yeah.
And Bamboozled is up there. Like it was when I saw it way too young, it helped me grow up. Like as like a kid that watched it in college, like early years of college, that was, and when I say young, I don't mean in age, I mean in maturity. Like if I now watch that movie for the first time, the ways in which I would approach that film would be completely different than my like freshman year of college when I did take that movie in, and like it helped me become a better person in the world.
I don't doubt that for a second. Like that is one of those films that, I mean, that Bamboozled is the reason why I saw Chi-raq. Like I'm like, oh my god, Chi-raq is playing in Boston. I want to go see it because when you got Spike Lee aping a theater script, like you're probably going to get something really good. And I was a little disappointed by Chi-raq because of how it veered so much from Lysistrata. But to see a modern adaptation of Lysistrata, I think that was 2015 too. Like, it was crazy. It was a crazy thing to do. But yes.
Yeah, I actually was in a theater where I was watching a Sundance movie, and I believe that was playing, and it was my first Sundance. So like Chi-raq was not a Sundance movie, to my knowledge,
Yeah.
but I do remember being in a theater looking at that playing in the theater next door as I went into one of my first Sundance movies of all time. Yeah,
I believe it because it came out around January. Like I
yeah,
had to see it in Boston because like limited places to so that it'd be Oscar eligible, and then I believe its
right.
wide release was January, which is generally where Sundance is. So believable. I mean, that was a good day. I also got to see Nocturnal Creatures or Nocturnal Animals, that Amy Adams one that was incredible. And then the third
Harsh,
one,
though.
yeah, very harsh. And then the third one, no, I think we saw 4 movies that day. So I don't need to say what the third was. It was the Legend film about the Cray twins, played by Tom Hardy. The movie exists, people. Seek it out. That movie is awesome. His acting in that film is excellent. It is a shame that
Two lost films
Yeah.
he has 2 lost films in his career, Legend and Lawless, which is the one he does with Shia LaBeouf.
Yeah.
If you want to see him really on the come up, right? Like those are the 2 movies you got to see. You got to look out.
Yeah, God, he's so good in Legend. And then the fourth one we saw was Manchester by the Sea, which was the only thing that was really notable. I mean, I liked Manchester by the Sea. I think it won the Best Picture, right? So, but it's not like that's a harsh movie too. Like that's a really hard movie to watch. But the part of it that really stuck with me is that the people behind us in the theater was like, "Is that Tony Estrella?" And it's like, "Oh, that's crazy that like other people do that besides like us."
It's Rhode Island, man. Everybody knows everybody. You know? And,
We
like,
were
that
in
person hits it
Boston.
big, it's all anybody talks
if
about.
If we were in Rhode Island, it wouldn't have. It was the fact that we were in Boston and it was happening.
Boston's just.
I know Boston is just Rhode Island
too.
North. Like,
Yeah.
don't tell them that. But that's the secret, everybody. Yeah.
We are so much a part of Boston like mythology in Rhode Island that in The Departed, the most Boston of Boston movies, we are still part of the plot of that film. Like
Yeah,
the whole like Providence bit. It's like
you're from Providence.
mm-hmm.
Oh God. Gosh, I'm the guy who's doing his job. You must be the other guy. The other guy? Tony Estrella. Sorry. Yes, so I totally agree with you on Barnyard, and yeah, we should probably look at that as a time capsule or something to do, because I should probably see it start to finish. I mean, Kevin James, so it's Sandler adjacent, all sorts of things. Also, Courtney Cox is in it, right? So
it's a wild one, man.
Yeah.
It really is a fucking wild ass cast. Yeah, it is a watchable film. But I said this very early on in this conversation, and I'll remind everybody, it's a mid film. Like it is. This is not me sitting here being like, this is part of the canon. You need to know this in order to. No. This is so far removed from necessary, but it is still a delight, and that's a rare mix for me. So
yeah. I mean, that's cool, and I do agree. I mean, of course it's a mid-film. It stole from The Lion King. Yeah, just to, like, turn the knife a little bit. All right. So, we said we're on a bit of a time crunch, and I guess I should explain why we're on a little bit of a time crunch. And that's because I've had a morning and an afternoon, and now we're recording on the evening on Sunday, which is different for us, just to show you how the sausage is made.
And then I'm going to a Broadway play later, so I need to be out of here.
Oh, yeah. You should buy a gun. Let's go see a Broadway show.
To a Broadway tour show.
What are you seeing? What are you seeing, though?
I believe the title is "Come From Away."
Oh God, that's a wonderful show. Come From Away.
Yeah, that's all I've heard.
Yeah,
I have not yet gotten to see it, but everybody.
I mean, it's probably the most toe-tapping, enjoyable experience you're gonna have, like adjacent to 9/11 in a theater, right?
Yeah, that's the thing. Is like that's the only thing I know about it is that it is 9/11 related, and like I know about the whole like idea, the story that it's people in like Norway that are like caught in an airport.
That's Newfoundland,
but anyway,
I think, right?
I don't know. You're asking the guy that hasn't seen it.
Well, I don't want to ruin it for
you.
you, but yeah. Yeah, so that's exciting. I was like, oh God, then yeah, we're gonna do it. Yeah. Yes. So that's awesome. So he's going to that. So here's what happened with me this weekend. And then I have some fun stuff to share from the week, but I want to explain why we're on a time crunch. Like, this episode's gonna end when this episode has to end. So just like be prepared for that. This weekend, for the 40th anniversary of the Ninja Turtles, they decided to celebrate the 40th anniversary of the first Comic-Con that they ever attended for the Ninja Turtles, right? So they did it at this brewery in Portsmouth, New Hampshire, because the first Ninja Turtles featured, the first Comic-Con that featured the Ninja Turtles was in Portsmouth, New Hampshire. So for the 40-year anniversary, they did the Portsmouth Mini-Con. And I had made plans with some people to go yesterday on the Saturday, but then they got tickets to go to Casa Bonita, and going to Casa Bonita, like, we'd rather spend our money on that. And I get that. I understand where they're coming from with that. So then I'm like, oh, well, I'm not going to get to go to this event. I'm a little sad about it. I had mentioned a couple episodes back that, like, you don't know how many more conventions might be in some of these people, right? At the 40th anniversary of the Ninja Turtles.
Yeah, right.
So it's one of those situations where, like, I'm bummed that I missed out on the Saturday, but I hadn't bought tickets yet because, like, it was also one of those things where, like, let's let fate decide if we go or not. So all of the things that I was planning for yesterday that, like, why I had to put off other plans and stuff ended up falling through. Worked out very nicely because a couple of people I would have wanted to celebrate with 2 Saturdays ago had bronchitis, so they could not partake in the festivities. So we pushed that back, and we had a pretty good belated 20th of April. That's the nicest way that I can put that.
Nice.
Wonderful. Yep. Just wonderful. So I didn't miss out on Saturday, but
again, man, I was up at 2:30 this morning at a house party.
Yeah, no,
I understand where you're coming from.
Yeah, exactly. Right. And I'm jealous of that. I love a good house party. But yes, so this one of the things that we were going to do on the way up there was hit this little breakfast joint in, like, Woonsocket, Cumberland area called Eggs Up. They're not a sponsor, but God, if you guys want to sponsor us, I would freaking shill for Eggs Up all day. The food is so good. Their hash, Sejohn, their hash. And they do these cinnamon roll pancakes that'll make you slap your mama. They're so good. But we were going to go there on the way up to Portsmouth. We were going to get breakfast there and do it. So I'm feeling, like, kind of bummed that I didn't get to go to Eggs Up. So I'm like, you know what? I got to be up early this morning to try to get a figure that releases today, 4/28. Got the figure. It's from the MOTU Masters of the Universe / Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. And it is Faker mutated into Slash. So, of course, they named him Sla'ker. I don't know if that's how you pronounce it. SLA apostrophe KER. Maybe Sla'ker? I don't know.
Sla'ker seems more in line with the joke. Like the bit of,
I mean, fake. I like that it's Faker, and he's like the Faker blue, but then it's got. I also like the storyline behind it is that Faker mutated into looking like Slash because he was exposed to the same mutagen that mutated Slash from a pet turtle into Slash in some of the continuities. So he released this morning. So I'm like, I want to be at Target early so that I can get the figure. That was a success. And there's a Target right by Eggs Up. Dale, why don't we go to Eggs Up so that that can still be part of the weekend? And she agreed. So we were up at 7:30, went to the Target when they opened. We got the figure, and then we went to have Eggs Up as victory. And it was wonderful. But then while I'm sitting there, I'm like, man, it's been a good day so far. Maybe we go up to the second day of this Portsmouth Mini-Con. We're only like an hour away by the time we're in Woonsocket, right? Like hour 15, depending on traffic. So I float the idea by Dale, and she's like, I mean, I'm kind of into it, but, like, I'm not sure. So I go, all right, how about this? We'll put it in the hands of fate. We're close to another Target. We've been having no luck with any of the holothon. Also, like, by the way, was going to apologize about all the toy talk that I've been doing, and I promise it's going to be curbed because, well, you'll listen to the rest of the story. But, like, it's just been sort of a way that I've been coping with some other stuff that's been going on in my life. But I know it's been an excessive amount of Devon Decker tries to find Ninja Turtle toys, and I want you to know I am aware of that. And if you feel you need an apology, I apologize. Back to it. We're near another Target. Let's see if we can maybe find some of the Holo stuff in the store. If we find...
You made it sound like I just, like, fucking, like, yelled at you off.
No. Sejohn is not the one who yelled. I yelled at myself off mic about how much I was talking about toys lately on the Say Report. It is not Sejohn. That's totally for me.
I don't know what Sejohn said to him, but he's real mean.
Sejohn was actually the one who's like, you don't need to apologize for what we talk about. That's why the show's about everything. So, like, when I even have the go-ahead to talk about the topic from the host companion in Sejohn, and I'm like, maybe I should still be like, apologies to anybody who might have been tired of it. That's where I was at. And we'll address that a little bit later down the line. But yeah, so it's like, well, we're near another one. Let's check out that one because the figure, this is what I wanted to have happen. I wanted to find in the Donatello micro series of the first volume of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles released by Mirage, they, Pete and Kevin, created a like XB of Jack Kirby, named Kirby. He's renting the extra room in April's antique shop. Remember when April like owned an antique shop that she inherited from her parents?
It's straight up in the movie in the 90s.
Yeah, exactly. But I mean, like 90, like my mother, when I like said, "Oh, she owns this antique shop and she rents out the room," she's like, "I thought April was a reporter," and I'm like, "Man, it's crazy how much continuity with the Ninja Turtles." But yeah, so she owns the shop, and Kirby has a magic pencil that anything he draws comes to life before fading away, and then he draws a portal. And that portal does not fade away. Turns out it links the world where the drawings go after they disappear with our world. And Kirby and Donatello fall into it and they have a whole adventure. That character got a figure as part of the haulathon that's going on for 2024 between NECA and Target. So the deciding factor on if we would go up to Portsmouth is if this additional Target we're going to has a Kirby on the shelf. Now, you heard in the last 2 episodes, I've had no luck with this stuff, right? So the odds of it happening, they're pretty low, right? Turns out the Attleboro Target is the first Target I've been into that's actually taking haulathon seriously. They have a full end cap that is full with all of the product. They were missing like the Casey Jones 2-pack, but like most of the product is on display.
Oh, shit, I just saw that this weekend at the Bountiful one, man.
The Casey Jones in the suit?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. I mean, like, the stuff goes up for line.
I straight up turned to Hannah and I was like, man, Casey Jones in a business suit. I love the figure, but it doesn't mean much to me. I don't know if it's worth this price.
Right.
Also had the full color Usagi Yojimbo was also one of the
nice. Oh, the samurai one?
Figures.
The samurai one?
Yes, the samurai one. Yeah,
those are the 2 things from haulathon that I'm still kind of looking for, but I'll wait and see if I can get them when they do a Friday drop. But that's
on Venmo, brother. I'll go pick them up for you right now.
I'm good. I found a haulathon in Attleboro. I think I've spent enough money on the turtles today. Is what I'm going to say. I appreciate you though, my brother.
I saw some of those FHS NECA boxes in person, and they hit me right. They did hit me right.
They are very wonderful. Yes. So we go to this, and they're taking it seriously, and there on the shelf is not 1, not 2, but 3 Kirby figures. And the goal, right, my hope going to this mini-con was that I could have a Kirby figure and get it signed by Peter Laird and Kevin Eastman. So finding it on the shelf, it's like, all right, this is fate telling us that we should go up to this mini-con and give it a shot. So we drive, and again, it's just an hour out of our way from where we are, right? Not discounting the fact that it's going to be 2 hours back, but so I contact Sejohn, and I'm like, is it okay? Something has come up. Can we push the recording? And he's like, yes, but I have a tight out. And I'm like, that's fine. We can hit this tight out. So I go up to the mini-con, and I got to be honest, I was a little disappointed with it. First of all, the prices for these conventions has gone up, right? Now I have the money, I have a little bit of savings, and I was going to go to it anyway. Yeah, but
you're talking
right?
like straight up like Miss Marvel-esque, like just done in a warehouse somewhere, right? Like these are not big to-dos, right?
No, this was it was at a brewery in Portsmouth. I will give the name of the brewery. Phil, while I type in Portsmouth Minicon 40.
I just remember when we were talking about actually this specific idea, like in Miss Marvel, like the ways that these little cons are the ones that kind of start the whole thing, and it could be disappointing, but if you think about it in terms of like supporting the little guy, like it becomes a little bit more easy to understand where some of the expenses are going and to swallow some of the weirder prices and pricing concepts.
Yes, and I mean I get where you're coming from with that, but then like it's not the little guy anymore. Like that was the thing that kind of hit weird.
Well, yeah, if you start to get a sniff of like there's some other shit going on, that's a whole different story for sure.
So I'm trying to see where it is on this the website. No, the website's not stupid. It's just trying to find it. I think it was like the Cisco Brewery. Where is this? Cisco Brewery in Portsmouth, New Hampshire. So it was the second floor of a brewery. So they have a full like bar section, food, dining. There's two guys playing acoustic guitars, singing songs while we get in. And then it's like to the right is registration for this. So we get there and we've been in the car for an hour. So we're like, we're going to hit the restroom first. Coming out of the restroom, we see people that we know, and it's like, hey, how you doing? Da-da-da. Are you coming up? And
I just like, if I was going to make the thong song into a beer, it would probably be like a pineapple Saison. But anyway, sorry.
I love it. No, thank you. God, now I want a pineapple Saison. I just sent you, Sejohn, in our personal Discord chat, the link for it. So you can have some information about it. And you can look at the price of the tickets, because I don't really want to say the price of the tickets out loud. You can look it up, Portsmouth Minicom. You can see how much it is. So, I have to. The price of the ticket is like $130. So for $130, you have like some expectation of what you're going to get. Now, granted, both Kevin Eastman and Peter Laird are there, but they show up at like Rhode Island Comic Con, and on the day, you can get in for like $40. And you're going to see a whole lot more. So this is a specialized, like, small event. You go upstairs, they have the main room and they have the merchandise room. The merchandise room is nothing to write home about. Like, there's 3, maybe 4 vendors in there, and everything is cash, which is, it'd be nice if that were on the website that everything is going to be cash, but when they don't specifically say that everything is cash, you sometimes wonder if, like, they're going to have other options, right? I'd been going to conventions prior to the pandemic, and kind of everybody had a Square thing, so you could pay with a credit card. Now, I don't know if the cost has gone up to be part of Square or anything like that, but for it to be a cash-only event, on top of you can only buy your tickets online, like, kind of given weird mixed messages about what...
I will tell you one of the big things to consider with, I don't know if this is true for the convention or not, but one of the other big things to consider about giving everybody a Square is that then you need to have a very extremely reliable and extremely secure wireless network. And one place you can cut a bunch of money real quick when you're trying to save some cash is you can dial back on the internet, and then suddenly you're just like, oh, but nobody's going to be able to take payments anymore. Fine, we're cash only.
Yeah. You know what? You bring up a good point there, Sejohn, and that's one of the things I like most about
it's
you.
It's a more Freakonomics style approach to the idea. Like, I don't know if it's necessarily a 1-to-1, but it's still not a great sign, because if there's one place you should be putting your money, it's in making sure that both your customers and your vendors are safe.
Yes. And also, if it's cash only, maybe the one ATM on the premises should not be out of order. Not out of money.
Jesus. Now, I thought you were at least going to say. I thought you were going to say that it costs like $4 a use, because that's also fucking bullshit.
Right.
It's like the ATM does the same thing every other ATM does, but for some reason this one costs $4. I don't know why.
Because it's not at a bank. Because they're screwing you over. Any cash business that has an ATM there, so you can pay for cash, that's part of the scam. Speaking of which, not to get too derailed, have you heard about the food digger scam? This thing is crazy. Okay, pin in there.
What?
Oh, yeah, we're going to talk about the food digger scam. This crazy.
I feel like I'm watching Unsolved Mysteries. I'm in, man.
Yeah, okay, good. Maybe we turn the Say Report into a true crime podcast, food digger scam. But we'll get to it. So it's cash only. You can't get cash at the ATM. So that's weird. And then I hear someone who works at the venue like, there's like 5 or 6 banks around the town. You can find a place to get cash and then come back. And it's like, well, that's a terrible attitude to have, right? Like, people are already at your event. The thing you don't want them to do is leave your event. Sorry.
Right. Yeah, I know, 100%. Yeah.
So also, like, I've been to other comic conventions that have cost less, and everybody is doing, like, free signings, right? Like, we'll do, and, like, within reason, right? You can't come up with, like, 50 books and be like, I'd like you to sign all of these. But, like, 1-2 items for free, and then maybe a cost for any additional item. I've seen that before. I've seen them, like, selling art and other things to make up for the fact that they're giving you their signature for free. Kevin Eastman was $20 cash to get him to either sign or do a shell head for you. that's like kind of how they all did it in the day. A little bit of TMNT background. They all just learned how to do really good like heads of turtles and then sign those. So like, it's this thing that we're familiar with, and they're all distinct and unique, and you're like, oh, there's Kevin's turtle, there's Peter's turtle, there's Eric Talbot's turtle. So that's how they did it. So that's why like the shell head is a big part of it. For Peter Laird, first of all, you sign up, that $130 gets you a VIP ticket that is supposed to ensure that you can see everybody, right? But then for Peter Laird, because they weren't expecting him to show up, which is a whole other thing, because if you look at the website I sent you, he's pretty prominently displayed as somebody who's gonna be there. So like, oh, it's a surprise that he's here. Is it? Is it a surprise? That's something. I guess he's not. But it did say that you could see both of them. And they, like all the stuff they're talking, whatever. This is not what we need to talk about. This is not the focus on. But it is just a thing that happened. So they're like, so now we're giving out tickets, and the tickets are color coded, and we're gonna go in order. So if you have a red ticket, there's a chance you're not gonna get to see Peter Laird for a $40 autograph. And it's just like, oof, like that's okay.
Yeah, but cashing in on like people's people's hobbies, people's connections, people's like entertainment is like kind of what's happening right now, because so many of these places are scrambling since COVID. And I don't even want to say that, like, I don't mean that in like it's justified because they struggled during COVID. They're allowed to act like this now, but rather they saw how bad it could get, and now we're finally getting back to a place where people can start to make money again. And people are so scared about what happened during all those years that they are behaving like idiots now and like trying to hoard as much money as they can get, because who knows when the next COVID's going to come around now, right? Like we're in that period where we need to readjust, and the pendulum has swung too far in the other direction. For 2 to 5 years, depending on what part of the industry you were in, you just were like on the back burner, and now you finally come back to the front, and you're doing everything you fucking can to make sure that the shit's getting cooked, and like you got to be careful about that, right? Like, so we're seeing people try and figure this shit out everywhere. It's not surprising to me that these like little cons are kind of part of that, because they suffered so much more than some of the larger cons. As much as the larger cons kind of couldn't do what they wanted to do, like, we forget that like these smaller ones really are for the fans. The larger ones are really more about like the business of like getting shit done.
Yeah.
Like Comic-Con and what's the big video game one? There's a whole that doesn't exist anymore is what I was gonna say. E3, right? Like
E3
like
is gone, yeah.
The reason those kinds of cons really existed was so that there was an excuse for certain people in the business to be in the same place at the same time to get some shit done, right? And then it just so happened that they realized they could make some money if they also opened it up to the public and sold tickets. So it's like, hey, we are all going to be going to this convention anyway so that we can all talk to each other and make sure these deals are getting made. But why don't we also make it profitable by like making a couple of our actors that are going to be there anyway get on stage and talk to a few fans and charge those fans $200 a pop. And like it evolved into these larger conventions. But like that idea that like these smaller cons, that's never really been, nobody's there making major deals, right? At these smaller ones, it is all about the fan interaction at those. And like they suffered the most when it came to this, to COVID and all of this, and being kind of shut down, or not even like being forced to shut down because of regulation, but like just like trying to do the math of like, we can open back up, but so many people right now still don't want to be in public that it's not worth it, which is like a whole other kettle of fish. It's it's part of the same meal, but it's definitely a different course, right? Like like there's this whole idea going on that like now they're back and they're so worried about what happened that they've just kind of gone over the top. And again, this isn't just happening in conventions. This is happening in entertainment. This is happening in music. This is happening in film. We're watching it constantly. We're watching, even restaurants. Like it's across the board. Any part of the industry out there, the American industry out there that depended on the American public to really buy in, like kind of is scrambling right now to figure out what the hell they're going to be. There's like a couple of restaurant spots in town out here that have gone through 3 different restaurants in the last year and a half because like they just keep opening up at like and like they're super extravagant and can't survive longer than like 3 months. They shut down and then the next one moves in.
Well, then,
It's
like,
wild watching it in like real time.
that makes me wonder if they're pop-ups, because the pop-up phenomenon has been kind of crazy. Where,
They should have been.
yeah,
That idea that they should have been pop-ups, but they were trying to push because again, we're back, right?
Yeah.
So I can move out of this pop-up mentality, which is something we talked about before. I'm going to open a full-on restaurant, and then they open up too fast, and they don't have the cash to back it up after 3 months, and suddenly they got to shut down.
where if they had just opened knowing that, like, we're going to be here for 3 months, let's maximize our profit over those 90 days, they probably could have gotten out with something to, like,
Some dignity.
yeah.
Yeah.
I was going to say
Yeah.
some kind of profit.
Yeah,
which-
but I mean social profit, because the problem is that if they open up like this and then they shut down, they're kind of stuck in this place where like, I don't want to go work for you anymore. I don't want to go to your restaurant. And you like people out here know, and this is true in every little community. They know when you're the same person that opened up that restaurant 3 months ago that failed. They know when you're that person that opened up that restaurant too fast and you broke health regulations. They know this kind of shit. Like this comes to everybody out here, and like you're kind of stuck. Whereas like you're saying, like with the whole pop-up concept, if you had gone in knowing, look, this is what we're gonna do. We're gonna obey this law. You know, we're gonna obey this lifestyle. We're gonna go in this direction, and people are on board with you the whole time, and then you bow out. People love that shit. People eat that shit up. We know that now. We've been seeing that for the last 10 years, right? Like, but no, there's a lot of people that are trying to make a full go at it nowadays, and they really need to slow down. Like, we need to find a good middle ground between like not getting any work done at all and like getting so much work done we're all screwing ourselves.
Yeah. Not only that, if you do that for 3 months and people love it, they're anticipating the sequel pop-up. Right? It's sort of movie marketing applied to restauranting, and it's crazy. But yeah, so that's like what we're seeing is this cash only. Everybody is charging more. It was weird, but then because Peter Laird was like, I guess a surprise, which is kind of crazy because he was definitely there yesterday as well. And I did get to see. I ran into him and Steve Levine. They were the ones that we ran into outside, so it was nice seeing them. And again, kind of supports my theory as to why we're celebrating the 40th anniversary of the Turtles without being too maudlin or like gallows humor about it. Just being completely honest. Like, yeah, I don't want to say any more, but like, theory confirmed. But because they didn't have a plan and they did those tickets, they had people queuing up to meet Peter Laird, and they were on the stairwell to do that, which, like, that's against fire regulation to just have a bunch of people as bumps on a log on a staircase. The only point of egress to the top floor where this entire event is happening. So, like, that, you know, coming from Rhode Island, like, you notice that stuff, right? I would like to think everybody notices when there's, like, an issue with fire code. So that was one thing. But then the other part is they put him at the corner. So in order to line up to meet Peter Laird, it was blocking 3 other booths of people. Now, I guess those people in line, hopefully they're going to interact and engage with those people. But, like, I wanted to see Steve Levine and, you know, talk to him because I haven't seen him in 5 years since the last convention that we were both at. And you know, like, there's someone talking to him. There's a woman talking to him. So, I'm in line to talk to him afterwards. And then security comes, like, you can't stand her. I'm like, well, I'm in line to see Steve Levine. They're like, oh, but the Peter Laird line is there, so you're not allowed to break that line. And I'm like, so this is just an awful experience for me. Tip to tail. Unlike Barnyard, which tip to tail is pretty good, according to Sejohn. Also,
again, not pretty good, but
Sejohn,
definitely watch.
Sejohn, another detour. Someone told me that cow tipping is a myth. That's not true, right? I've tipped a cow in my day.
Yeah. It's not so much as a myth. It's more like we held it up as this thing that was much more prevalent than it actually was, right? Like, one guy goes cow tipping and then suddenly everybody that generation goes cow tipping. It's that bullshit. You know, like, one person stops buying napkins and suddenly millennials have quote unquote killed the napkin industry. It's like, no. Like,
speaking of millennials killing the napkin industry, are you taking part in this new millennial trend of buying groceries?
I'm sorry, what the fuck?
I don't remember what the paper was, but they're like, the new millennial trend is grocery shopping. And it's just like, wow, we live in dystopia.
I
Don't
mean,
we?
the thing is like it used to be a very hipstery thing to do to start kind of really becoming a quote unquote foodie, right? To get into making your own food. More often than not, I will say in America, and I will say in more urban and suburban areas than rural, but like it is pretty much the norm, or it was pretty much the norm that going out happened more often than cooking at home. There were definitely days you cooked at home, specifically holidays or maybe certain days of the week that you always cooked at home. But more often than not, especially if you start breaking it out into breakfast, lunch, and dinner, breakfast and lunch were definitely just go out meals, and then maybe dinner happened at home, and that is a big maybe. Nowadays, that has shifted hugely and immensely, right? And a
Yes.
lot of that has to do with price. Like it's the economy. The more costly it comes to go out, the more people start to realize the benefits are truly like eating at home. And that is for good and for ill, because on the one hand, you're eating at home, you're able to control your diet better, you're able to make sure you're not getting a bunch of chemicals and shit that are trying to preserve shit in the food out there to make it safe for you to eat it out there, but also in mass, but also like really they aren't good for you in the long run. Like the balance of eating out versus what you can control at home, eating at home was always the better option, right?
Oh yeah.
And like anybody that had that ability was always in a better position to make sure they had a healthier life, and a healthier life means a better life. Like there was a privilege to being able to do that a lot of people are starting to realize was always available to them, more so than necessarily like, oh my god, it's finally available to us. It's more like we didn't really put much thought into this because society didn't really make us think about it much until fucking going out to places became $15 for a hamburger, right? And I don't
Yeah.
necessarily love that like argument either. I'm not somebody that like shishu like poo-poos that nonsense. Like if I go to the right restaurant and that burger is the right kind of burger, yeah, I'll pay $15 for it. But like I also won't if I don't deem it worth it. Like there's more nuance to that conversation than most people online want you to believe, right?
Yeah. I mean, it
But
was a
I
clickbaity
100% am
title.
on
Like,
board.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah, but I'm 100% on board with that, like that idea that more people are figuring out that they can just cook shit at home now, and it's like, yeah, because we kind of had to, because like the lifestyle we were leading, that was like a leftover of like late '80s, mostly '90s culture. Like we've started to realize how much it was both killing us both in health and in our wallet.
Yeah. And plus, an 89-cent 5-layer beefy cheese burrito at Taco Bell now costs $3.49. Inflation is real.
Well, the big thing we were talking about when we were out last night, because again, we started at a couple of nicer restaurants before we decided to just crash, legitimately because we hit a point where we were like, let's stop wasting money and just buy a bunch of good shit for us just to eat at somebody's house and drink cheaper booze, right? Like that was the legitimate conversation we had, because like it started from the very first restaurant we went to where we sat down to get drinks and apps while we waited for the actual restaurant to let us in to sit down. Like we were sitting there, and the appetizers we got, we were all like, we're coming here 3 years ago and these bowls were bigger and these plates were bigger and these servings were bigger. And it's just like, oh, they haven't changed their price in 3 years. Like they haven't gotten more expensive like a lot of other places have, but now they're serving less food.
Oh,
Like, and that's just
shrinkflation,
their
to
result.
use
Yeah,
that
right.
buzzword.
Right, exactly. And it was like we were that kind of moment of just like kind of started this like snowball for the rest of the night, where everything became this whole idea of like, it's cool that we're out and like being at places and seeing each other, but man, we could save some cash if we just went to somebody's house and just played Jackbox. Like, what are we doing? Like, and then that's what we ended up doing at the end of the night.
Yeah. I mean, I guess, and so even though I've had all these complaints about this thing, right, I got to see some people that I haven't seen in years, which was nice. But the real thing that I'm choosing to take away from it, the silver lining of paying way more for much less at this type of, like, at this level of convention, is the fact that I have totally cured my FOMOOCon, or my fear of missing out on conventions, because I've been having that itch to go back to like PAX or to go to like Anime Boston. Like I've missed that part of like being a part of this culture of this pop culture stuff. And going today, it's like no, like you've kind of, A, I feel like I've outgrown it a little bit, but B, I do not have that kind of dispensable income, right? Just like I don't really like to go to concerts anymore, because the concerts I used to pay $10 to $30 for are now $100 to $600. Like,
Yep.
it's exactly what you're talking about, that pendulum. So I am very happy that I have been cured of my FOMOOCon.
And I will say, like, with the music one, right? There's ways to take in live music that you don't have to do that, right? Go to a bar that has a live band on Friday nights, and yeah, there might be a $5 cover, but you're still going to get to hear a live band, and that's where some of the coolest shit comes from, right? Like, so there's also, like, in that regard, some way to take that in. As far as the convention stuff goes, I mean, your best bet there is just support whatever local mom and pop shops exist around you still, because walking into those places is basically like walking into a booth at those conventions anyway.
Yeah, I mean, those bigger conventions, I went to Wizard World Boston. I was Lou Ferrigno's handler, which, like, that sounds weird, because, like, I'm not like in a dog way, but, like, whatever Lou Ferrigno needed for the day, I was his gopher for, which was an interesting thing to do. But then being at Wizard World Boston, I'm like, wow, this is just a flea market. Like, this is a flea market with a premium price tag, but it's not much better than what you're getting at the flea market. And I've kind of
There's some
experienced
good flea markets, man. I'm just saying. Which, to your point, I wouldn't bother going to a con then. I just go to those good
just
flea
go to the
markets.
flea market, right? Exactly. Like, that's what it came to. Like, even if you got to pay $5-10 to get into the flea market, like, some of those flea markets, like, I got Super Mario RPG new in box at a flea market. Yes, it cost me $80, but the game had been out for like 6 years, and I bought it, and that's how I played and beat Super Mario RPG for the first time. And also, Chip and Dale, the game that, like, really got me into speedrunning, I paid 50 cents for at a flea market. Like, you're going to find the deals. I mean, granted, this was back in the early 2000s. Nowadays, people who sell collectibles either know what they have or think they know what they have, so you're not going to find deals like that. I want people to understand that, as I am talking about buying Super Mario RPG new 6 years later for $80 and, like, an NES game for 50 cents. I don't think you could get any NES game for less than $1 these days. And even then, like, it'd be a sports title that you can't play because you don't have the mat that all of them stopped working, and no one's creating new mats for it. But yes, so I flew a little bit too close to the sun with the fun, trying to go to the mini con, but I'm glad that I did it, because it really, I'm not missing out. There's no fear of missing out on conventions, because I have been to the convention, and I have seen that they are still just basically flea markets shoved into a different place, and with, like, higher cost of entry and then higher cost of engagement. So that's why we're recording late tonight. And I just wanted to explain that. Put it into the hands of fate. Fate brought me there, but I have a Kirby figure now, and that makes me happy. So, yeah. Also, this is the week, this past Wednesday, the 150th issue of IDW Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles released, bringing an end to that whole saga. Come June or July, they're starting a bunch of new number ones, if you're one of those people. But if you, like, had bowed out of the IDW comics, like I had, this was the time to come back and read issue 150 for the end of it. And I'm not super happy with it. Sejohn, do you want to do, like, 5 quick minutes on this? Or do you want to save this
let's
for,
talk
like...
about it, man. No.
How you feel about time loops in entertainment?
Well, like, okay, so, like, time loops are a subsection of time travel, which are already controversial storylines, right? Like, and there's like a whole aspect to that. I think a good, well-used time loop is definitely a blast, but, like, all science-y bullshit, like, it's really easy to fuck it up. So, like, did they do it well?
No. In fact,
there you go.
All right. Here is the quickest. Where is my timer? I would like to give myself 2 minutes to try to describe Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles IDW. And 2 minutes on the clock. So the IDW Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, in addition to being turtles and a rat who were mutated by mutagen to become fighters, they are also the reincarnated Hamato clan who were senselessly slaughtered by the Shredder in feudal Japan. So,
okay, sorry, not to take any of your time,
That's
really,
fine.
but when you say time loop, can you clarify for me then? Is it legitimately like, oh, we're just going to keep going back 10 minutes to see if we can fix this? Or do you mean time loop as in these people get born again? Like a la like Link in the Legend of Zelda games, right? Like the hero time is always born and then goes up against Ganon and blah, blah, blah.
I mean time loop in the fact that everything that happens because of us. And at the end of everything that's happened over these 150 issues, there is a time loop that will always repeat. And then the end of the loop is me getting back to my family.
Okay.
It's like a causal loop, I guess is what you call it.
Max, what's the Mighty
Sam and
Max did
Mighty Max.
did it pretty darn well for me.
God,
so
Mighty Max is like the gold standard. They did not Mighty Max with this. I did pause the timer. There's a minute 32 left. I'll go back into it. So they are reincarnated of the Hamato clan. What 150 does, as they are chasing future Donatello to try to get him to tell them why he created Armagon, the time shark who is devouring time, and they wind up at the night that they were mutated, Donatello and Venus de Milo, who's like a weird Frankenstein mutant. I don't want to really get into it because I don't really understand it 100%. But yeah, so they're at the night that they're mutated, and it's like, oh, we can't interfere because if we do anything, we're going to fuck up us getting mutated, and then none of this will happen. And then they follow again, and they're in feudal Japan. And it's like, you can't stop the Shredder from killing them, because if you do, then die. But also, Krang, he's back there too, because he wants to get their QNA, their quantum nucleic acid. And quantum nucleic acid is how they were allowed to be resurrected. The soul, which has been the ultimate thing that they're trying to discuss in the IDW series, like that's Donatello's whole thing is like, what is the soul? Is the soul real? If we were reincarnated, yes. I need to find a scientific explanation. It's QNA. And their Q&A is so powerful that everybody wants it. But they don't give it that name until like the 149th issue. And at the very end of everything, Venus de Milo, who sacrificed herself to kill the time shark, she walks through. All right, time's up. And I'm fine to talk about it. But like, you kind of understand now that like they're not just magic turtles who were exposed to radioactive waste from an alien species that caused them to mutate. Like, there's stuff going on. And apparently, like, in the 130s, they teamed up with Shredder, and he taught them reincarnation magic. So, like, Donatello being there is part of the way that they're able to be resurrected in the future. And, like, this has to happen. And then the epilogue is Venus transporting their quantum nucleic acid and putting it into the 4 turtle eggs and Splinter, so that they can eventually be reincarnated. Which means that
So you don't just mean a time loop, you mean a straight up paradox.
Yeah, like it's like a causal loop is what I think they call it.
Right.
Like it's like everything has to happen. And I gotta tell you, like, that was kind of disappointing to me. Now, granted, I stopped reading around the 100th issue because the idea of a mutagen bomb going off in New York City and the town, like mutant town being segmented off and that, like, it didn't really jive with me. I think one of the things that always bothered me, as a Ninja Turtle fan, right? Clearly I'm some sort of Ninja Turtle fan based on everything that I've talked about the last 3 episodes. And at the top of this episode, I like the Mirage stuff because it's animals who are given, like, the gift of humanity rather than humans who have their humanity stolen from them. Bebop and Rocksteady are hyper-tragic cat figures to me. In the original Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle 1987, like, cartoon, because they didn't know what they were signing up for. And then you have this fucking hulking Rhino Man or Warthog, and, like, if you never want to work for the Shredder, like, what are you supposed to do? Like, it's like their humanity is taken from them. Their humanity is taken them to the fact that, like, later on in the comics, the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Adventures by Archie, when you revisit Bebop and Rocksteady, they're walking around in the nude, and like the animal parts of the mutation have taken over, and they've talked like they were animals before becoming humans. Now, regardless of if that's a continuity error or not, like it feels like, yeah, because then these guys are like, oh, we got to be human, even though we were just a rhino and a warthog. This is the zoo where we were kept before we were exposed to mutagen. And then, like, that also leads, like, well, what if the guys who became Bebop and Rocksteady, what if they were murdered by the Shredder and he used their human DNA to create the mutants that we know as the warthog and the rhino? And that's an existential crisis I can't deal with. So when the big thing in the IDW is that, like, we're going to take, like, half the population of Manhattan and mutate them because old Hobbs sets off a mutation bomb, like, yeah. Fuck, I'm not really on board for that, right? Like, I'm sorry, I'll be honest. And I was already struggling with it a little bit because of the whole where this reincarnation of the Hamato clan, and then also Oroku Saki is going to be able to be resurrected so that our fight goes on forever. Like, time travel was always kind of a part of it, but then at the end of it, to make it, oh, we're the reason that these events were set into motion, like... Ugh, I don't know. Like it works for me in Futurama. It works for me in Mighty Max. It didn't work for me 150 issues later. For the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
No, like all twists, like all major plot points, like you need to earn them, and when you don't earn them, the audience recognizes that. You know, maybe not everybody will recognize that. They, as far as I can tell, they've actually been very successful in terms of this run. This 150,
this road to 150
this year was like a a celebration, really. Like, and so like, you know, for a lot of people, it seems like this kind of stuff did. I don't know. The other thing is like time will tell, right? Like, it's like right now people may love it or may hate it, but then like, you know, we'll know in 10, 15 years how people really feel about it. The amount of reassessing like our views on like Ultimate Spider-Man that are going on right now, and the amount of people that like are talking about the ways in which like certain things played out in those Ultimate runs, and how maybe they weren't as like good as we held them up to be, and kind of then became the backbone of a lot of the MCU stuff that we now have a problem with, and things like that. Like there's some real reassessing going on of the last like 20 years of what people have loved in the fandom as far as comics go, and the same will go here with this stuff, you know.
Yeah. I will say there's an Ultimate Spider-Man, I think it's 52, where Otto Octavius has a conversation with his claws that is probably one of the greatest things I've ever seen in a comic book. Like, the way it's animated, the way that they don't talk, but the way that they're drawn so that you understand what they're saying is gorgeous. And then, I mean, Ultimate Spider-Man 64, when Carnage kills Gwen Stacy, spoilers, that's another one that was, like, awesome. Like, the emotional stuff from what was supposed to be the kid-friendly Spider-Man comic book because they saw the movie and liked it. Yeah. Like, they went to some levels. But then, some of the other stuff, I understand that. But I have to bring up, if Ultimate Spider-Man is on the table, I feel compelled to bring up that issue 52. It's the second issue of the Hollywood arc, and it is Dr. Otto Octavius having a, like, 15-panel conversation on one page with his tentacles. That, like, oh my god, this is the shit that they're writing in these books? I should start reading them again. And then watching Gwen die was crazy. And then the follow-up is a parody of The Breakfast Club, where, like, it's all sorts of crazy people in detention, and they're all mourning Gwen in their different ways. Oh, God, like, there's some cool stuff that's in there, but I don't disagree that that is being reassessed, and I wonder what will happen down the line with 150. One thing I do know is that I brought up Kirby and his magic pencil. Donatello used a magic pencil to draw a new family for himself.
Kirby and his purple crayon.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, it's fine. And that was hyper controversial in volume 4 of the Mirage Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, because it was revealed in the 22nd issue that April O'Neil herself was just a drawing brought to life. and that's why she was unable to procreate. I think I've covered that before, but then for like, Donatello missed his brothers, so he drew us, and he hates us. Like, and we'll live forever because he put some Q&A in us, and it's just, my goodness. You're introducing, I guess the problem for me is that the culmination issue should be just that. A culmination of everything that came before. And if in those 64 pages you have to tell your final story, you're using some of them to introduce brand new characters and concepts, that feels like a waste of that precious time you have to tie everything together.
Well, and it points to the idea that you may not have had this in your head the whole time, like, and nowadays audiences hate that, right? We love like a realization that they set this shit up in episode 1, right? Like that moment of, oh, all the pieces are coming together. Like, that's what we want in our finales nowadays, like as an audience, as a culture. At least in America and pop culture, like, we love that bit when we finally get to see all the pieces fit together and like it was there the whole time. And to realize that that's just not the case with this, like, is a bit of a bummer. But it's important to recognize that, like, there's plenty of good art that doesn't resolve in that way. That, like, I mean, time is linear, right? Progression happens.
Yes.
Certain things get resolved that didn't, right? There was a time when we didn't care about that sort of stuff. There's probably more than one, but there's at least one podcast out there where like their whole bit is they'll watch like the first episode of a show and then the finale of a show and then like talk about like that. And sometimes they're aware of the show, sometimes they're not. So sometimes they're just like talking out of their ass. What is the name of that one? I'll have to look that up later and post in the Discord. But like, it's a fascinating way to take in the story, right? Is like what happens in the first moments and what happens in the final moments. And I would argue that we as a culture would hold up more often than not a show that has that kind of connection between the first episode and the last episode, like as like the ideal, right? Versus like those shows that just like, look at like something like Supernatural, where in the first show they're like going after a ghost lady on the side of a road, and then in the finale of it there's this whole thing about like God and the devil and Jesus and their brother possibly being Jesus too, and it's like, what the fuck is like this has nothing to do with like two dudes hunting down ghosts in like the South in a cool car with rock music playing. What the fuck is happening?
Yeah, I mean, but I think the other type of thing is, and we saw it with like How I Met Your Mother is a shining example of this, where you've done so much to grow the story, but then in the final issue, like, but this is how we always plan to end it, and it doesn't jive with what has happened since your first issue.
That just feels disingenuous, right?
Yeah.
Is like, they say that, but like, if you can't prove that to us, if you can't show us the clues that we were missing, then fuck you. Like, you can say that all you want. You did a bad job of it then. Like
as somebody who essentially I think I read through to the 12th issue at least of the IDW stuff, and then I read the last 4 because I saw the cover art to 147, and I'm just like, wow, this looks like it's changed a lot. And it had like 147, 148, 149 were very interesting, but then 150, all it was referencing was stuff that I knew from those like first 12, maybe 20 issues that I read. And I'm like, so this feels like this was the plan the whole time, was to revisit this stuff. And it doesn't even feel like it connects to the stuff I read in the 3 issues leading up to it. Like, this is like, that really, it felt more How I Met Your Mother than anything else. Having Donatello, like, his soul thing finally being resolved and that. I don't know. It was an interesting thing. But then, like, Sunrise Sunset, in a lot of ways, going to the 40th anniversary of the first convention, and also this week reading that 150th issue of IDW. Officially the longest running continuous series of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle comics. Which I will say, if you have opportunity, Bebop and Rocksteady Destroy Everything, regardless of my whole thing that they are hyper tragic characters, is a 3-issue miniseries that IDW did that just does not give a fuck and is one of the greatest reads I've ever done. Like, I suggest that, based on everything I just said. Okay, so I put a pin in Food Diggers And you're not familiar with this. This is a new thing for you. You're not
Yeah,
familiar with
no,
this.
we got 10 minutes left, brother. Let's do this. Or 15 minutes left.
Yeah,
Let's do
okay.
it.
Food digging is the act of a restaurant catfishing somebody to get them to eat at their restaurant.
What? Holy what? No, what?
Yeah.
You
It
mean like okay, wait, just for clarification, and you may get to this, and I apologize if I'm jumping the gun, but
No, it's
like,
fine.
are they seeking out individuals and being like on Facebook, like, hey, meet me at this restaurant, and it's actually just the owner of the restaurant? Or do you mean like putting out an ad that advertises Mexican food, and then you show up and it's just like, an Americana mishmash of whatever, right? Like
the
Tex-Mex bullshit.
former, the former, going on to
Ooh.
going on to dating apps, pretending to be a person, saying, "Hey, why don't we meet tomorrow at the Newport Creamery at 8 p.m." Using a local reference just for the flavor of it. I go to
Not,
Newport
not that they are
Creamery.
guilty of this.
No, not that they're guilty of it, but like it's also like smaller stuff. And like while Newport Creamery is a chain, like it's not like Applebee's is doing this. It is smaller restaurants in large urban areas. This is a thing that started in 2023, but like it's seeing a rise now again. And it's one of those things where I'm like,
Considering the way that franchising works,
yeah,
might not be too long until you hear
might
about
not be
like
too long to that
the
happens,
guy
right?
that Norman that owns 5 Wendy's in like southern South Dakota like suddenly got caught catfishing some
Yeah.
some people.
So it's like
Yeah.
a nice romantic restaurant, right? So like meet me at the bistro at 8 p.m. So you go to the bistro at 8 p.m. and you're stood up. And then 9 out of 10 times when a person is stood up on a Tinder date or a Bumble date or any sort of dating app date, they get food at that place.
Well, and very specifically, probably get a couple of drinks, right?
Yeah.
Like the most
Well,
expensive markup you're gonna pay in a restaurant.
The craziest thing that I've seen on this is the catfisher, right? So the person who's lying to them is like, get there at 8, and then as they're like, you're like, I'm running a little bit late. Why don't you order a bottle of this and this appetizer so that it's there by the time I arrive? And the person does that, right? Like they're not thinking about it, and then it's like a $300 bottle of wine that
That's
they
fucking.
ordered.
This is gross.
This
There's
is like-
evidence of this happening.
This is one of the
even
most
once?
like I've read a bunch of stuff. Like I saw it coming home on Thursday. I saw it listed. Maybe it was Wednesday. It was Wednesday or Thursday. I was scrolling through social media. I read it and I'm like, that is too dystopian to be real. But then I went on Snopes. I went around and I found evidence of this is a thing that is happening, and that is just terrifying to me. That like that's what we've gone to, right?
Yeah, protect your shit out there, people. Like, don't ever order food for a person that's not sitting in front of you. Holy shit.
Yeah, and check the prices before you order stuff. Like, don't be like blinded by the fact that like, oh, I might get laid. But like, that's the other thing. There was some show that I was watching. I don't remember what it was. It might have been Law and Order or something like that, where like the person it was SWAT. The Honey Trap gang. So it was basically Point Break, but it was a bunch of sexy Latin women who were, catfishing guys so that they could get back to their houses, drug them, and steal all of their expensive stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And they were targeting like pro athletes and stuff like that. And the commander's like, people really fall for this? And it's like, yeah, when there's a chance to get laid, men do not think about it at all. So, like, that was the other thing, is that Honey Trapper episode of SWAT that we just watched adds into the fact that, like, food digging seems like a completely believable scam to be out there. Right? Like, what the
okay.
fuck?
So I'm finding a lot of stuff on Reddit, so take that as it were.
As it were, yeah.
Apparently this is happening in places like India. I'm having a hard time finding a lot of it referencing things happening specifically in like America. I like just this is not me making a judgment one way or the other, just pointing out the places where seems to be like our Delhi is like the first one that comes up. I got to tell you who I feel really bad for at all of this though, as I Google food digging, is I feel bad for diggingfood.com, an entire website dedicated to like growing your own food in your garden. They are now caught up in this bullshit when I Google for the bad thing, but Now there they are, an entire website that I'm clicking on because I want to know if they're like related to this in some way, this terrible practice in some way. And it's like, no, this wholesome person trying to just teach you how to grow your own carrots in the backyard.
Yeah. I mean, it was crazy. Like, that's all I can say is that, yes, maybe it's not here, but like, it's in the water, Sejohn. I wouldn't be surprised.
Well, so the bigger, so yeah, so there's definitely a couple of articles written about it in America, but what's interesting about those is none of them seem to be referencing any specific cases of it happening versus like the subreddit shit, which again you have to take with a grain of salt, is people talking about it happening directly to them. Like, but like the bigger thing is in one of these they mention the idea that this is basically akin to the bullshit that we know people were doing of bashing other restaurants, right? Like restaurant owners getting onto like Yelp and giving bad reviews to a bunch of other stuff in the area, so that they got boosted if anybody was looking for stuff in their area, that kind of shit, which we know is happening. I mean, Yelp was a fucking cesspool for like, is still a cesspool. I got to remember it still exists. I just don't use it anymore. Yeah. The ways in which this kind of atmosphere breeds this kind of bullshit, I shouldn't be so surprised that this is the kind of thing that's happening. I have met more than one restaurant owner in my life that I think would be willing to do this kind of shit to do what they do. That sucks. I've also, there's plenty of people that work in the restaurant industry that aren't like this, but like, I can't believe this is the first I'm hearing about it, I guess, is what I'm getting at.
Yeah. I mean, we live in Rhode Island, I live in Rhode Island, you come from Rhode Island, which animal control, which I love animal control, but the family was very mad at the most recent episode of Animal Control because Joel McHale referred to it as America's corruptest state, the kidney stone of the United States, Rhode Island. And
I was going to say, I mean, this is basically mob tactics, which is like our bread and butter in Rhode Island, right?
Yeah, exactly. As we record this for the anniversary of Plunderdome, right? Caught that on the news this morning. So
everything that's going on with that fucking bridge that you guys are still dealing with between East Providence and Providence.
They opened 3 lanes, Sejohn, and it really changed things, according to the people on TikTok, which is banned now. Sejohn, how about something light to finish off this episode? Does that sound like a plan? How's that feel with you?
It feels good. Let's do it. Let's wrap this one up.
Sejohn, when's the last time you went to Red Robin?
Real talk. About probably 3 months ago, I got it in my head that I really wanted a burger, but there was a couple of burger places in town that are too expensive for their own good in that regard, just to bring that conversation back. So I was finally like, fuck it, I'm going to go to the Red Robin. And it was disappointing. But maybe you had a better experience?
I had a much better experience. Though the person I was dining with did believe that our waitress by the end just wanted us to die and sit in our own blood. He felt that once we had the checks dropped, she wanted nothing more to do with us. But I had an enjoyable experience. Now, I think the reason I had an enjoyable experience, Sejohn, are you aware of the fact that Red Robin has, like, the infinity gauntlets of cream soda available to enjoy at Red Robin?
I think I noticed that. I was too focused on the fact that the burger I got was a fucking like hockey puck. Like it was not Utah's not a beef state, and it was my mistake going to look for a good burger in a beef state. So anyway, we're gonna get off of that. No, I seem to recall them having a large option of various sodas. I did not realize that they went full in on the cream soda.
So they have 5 cream sodas available now. So the reason I'm at Red Robin is that a friend. He's like, I really have it in my head to go to Red Robin. And I'm like, let's do it, right? Like, we're trying to do fun, exciting things, trying to get out into the world. Let's go to Red Robin. Now, because we do live in the future, I'm going to look at the menu beforehand. And looking at the menu beforehand, I see that they have 5 cream sodas. The candied orange cream soda, the raspberry cream soda, the desert pear cream soda, the Dr. Pepper vanilla cream soda, and the Make-A-Wish dream soda.
So are these like bespoke cream sodas, like they're making them in-house, or are these like from a company? Like,
no, these are bespoke. They are. What is this? So like the candy orange is candy orange flavor mixed with Sprite with double the whipped cream for extra creaminess. Which, like, that's not really a cream soda. Whipped cream and Sprite is not that. And then they put in the flavor. But I get in my head, I have to try all 5 of these cream sodas. Now, I'm a professional, so the waitress comes to the table. The server comes to the table. Sorry for archaic language. Server comes to the table, and I go, look, I'm going to be honest with you straight up. You got 5 cream sodas. Before the end of this meal, I'd like to have tried all 5 of those cream sodas. You think we can make this happen? You think we can work together? She's like, totally. She's totally on board. And now I'm like, I'm willing to tip. I know that I'm asking more from her than would be usual, right? And I'm going to tip appropriately. And I did tip appropriately, redacted. However, so I tried all of them. Sejohn, it was a great experience. I started with the candied orange because I'm like, I don't know how that's going to be. Probably the number 3 spot overall. The raspberry cream. Then I went with the raspberry cream because I'm like, I like raspberry cream, but also the Make-A-Wish Dream Cream is a blue raspberry cream, so I wanted to even those out. The prickly pear, I love the flavor of prickly pear. I've noticed it cropping up in more things on the East Coast. I had a prickly pear hard lemonade a couple of weeks ago. Then it was knocked me on my ass, not just because it was delicious, but because it was very strong. Had a good time with that. And then I did the Make-A-Wish Dream Cream, which I had to pay separate for. All the other ones were just refills, but because the full cost of that goes to the Make-A-Wish Foundation, she had to charge me for it, which I was completely fine. I would have been fine if she charged me for each individual cream soda. I knew what I was getting into. I'm glad that she took care of me as her customer. But then the final one, the Dr. Pepper Vanilla Cream, she puts it down and she's like, that's my favorite. And I'm like, yeah, that's the one I think's probably going to be the best. That's my number 1 right there. Dr. Pepper, a blend of vanilla and Dr. Pepper with whipped cream and a cherry on top.
Who is this Pepper and what is his PhD in? Because he's amazing at making sodas.
23 flavors. He has a PhD in 23 flavors, and he knows how to combine them in a way that is delicious. But I feel, after consuming all 5 cream sodas, a bit like I'm inevitable. Right? I kind of want to call it the cream glove, playing off of the beast glove from the new Godzilla Kong movie.
Gotta back that one. You gotta back that one up, brother. You gotta rethink that one.
Yeah, I know, right? So I'm like, no, that don't sound as good as it did on paper. So I'm going with the Infinity Gauntlet of cream soda. There you go. And it was fun. It was a good time. It was a fun time at the Red Robin. But if you haven't been to Red Robin in a hot minute, they're not a sponsor, but their drink game is on fire. And you don't think about drinks when you think about friggin' Red Robin. You think about hamburger cheeseburgers.
No, that's more of an Applebee's mindset, right?
Yeah. So, it was a fun thing that I did. We are rapidly approaching our time where we're going to get done. I just want to put this out to any of the listeners. I have seen the first episode of Velma Season 2. I'll probably do the rest if you want to talk to it. But more importantly, I have done the first episode of Knuckles. I will let the Discord know when I can talk about Knuckles. Everybody who reached out to me, both in the from the Discord and from the rest of my life who might be listening to this, yes, I want to talk about the Knuckles show with you. However, I have not had opportunity to watch all of the Knuckles show, and I would like to watch all of the Knuckles show. But that first episode was awesome. Just nice. Knuckles is the peacemaker of Sonic. Is the way I can say it. If we're gonna go with bad analogies, all episode. No, your analogy.
All right.
Anything that you want to say, Sejohn, before we send this one off?
No, let's send it away.
All right. Thanks so much, everybody, for listening. Brendan Fraser History Month starts next week, and William, please bring us home.
Thank you for listening to the Say Report with your host Devon Decker and Sejohn Sejohn. Please follow the guys on Twitter and Facebook by searching for The Say Report, and you can always subscribe on your podcast channel so this is delivered straight to you and you can enjoy it every week. With apologies to your mother, we'll see you next time.